Where is John? John bought a big motorbike because on hot days he liked riding around with the wind in his face. He tried putting Red Dog on the seat in front of him, but Red Dog preferred the comfortable seats of cars and buses. When John went out in his car, Red always wanted to go too. But when John got on his bike, Red stayed at home or went visiting his friends to get a meal. One night, John went to have a meal at the house of some friends, and he took the bike. It was July, and the nights were very cold. Red Dog was out, looking for other dogs to fight and wallabies to chase. What happened that night will always be a mystery. John had some beers, but not too many, and he left his friends after a happy evening and a good meal. On the road coming into Dampier, there is a sudden bend, and on both sides of the road there are great red rocks. Perhaps John was going a bit too fast. Perhaps there was something wrong with his bike. Perhaps there was a stone on the road. But something went wrong, and John hit the side of the road and went flying through the air. He came down on one of the great rocks. No one knows how long John lay dying. He tried to get back to the road, but he was too badly hurt. And after a while, that kind, animal-loving man, who was a friend to everyone, died alone in the rocks by the road. Perhaps he thought about Red Dog while he slowly fell into that long-last sleep on that cold and starry night. The next morning, John did not come in to work, and his friends were worried. "I got a bad feeling," said Vano, shaking his head. "It's not like John," said Pito. "He phones in if he's not coming." "Let's give him until Smoko," said Jocko, "and if he's still not here by then, I'll go out and look for him." John was not there by break time, so Jocko went round to John's little house. He found Red Dog waiting outside the door. The dog got to his feet and wagged his tail. "Where's your mate?" asked Jocko. He knocked on the door, but he knew there would be no answer. John never left Red outside if he was at home. John's car was there, but not his motorbike, and Jocko remembered about the dinner with friends. Jocko went back to the bus station and phoned the friends. "When John left you last night, was he on his bike?" "Yes." "Why? What's up?" "He never got home." Jocko borrowed a car and drove along the road from the friend's house. He was a motorbike rider himself, and he knew which places were dangerous for a bike rider. When he came to the bend near Dampier, he stopped the car and got out. He walked across the road and looked down over the red rocks. Dampier was a small place back then, and everyone knew John and liked him. His death made everyone unhappy. He was too young, much too young, to die so suddenly. He died with all his life in front of him, leaving behind some good friends and a dog who loved him. When someone dies, there is a lot to do. 3 days later, someone remembered Red Dog and found him still waiting outside John's house. John's friends brought food, and Red Dog ate it, then lay down again outside the door. He slept there through the cold nights, waiting, waiting, waiting for John to come home. After 3 weeks, he went to the bus station and spent half his time there with his friends, the bus drivers, and half his time outside John's house. What goes on in a dog's head? No one knows how much language a dog has, or how they think. But there was surely one big question in Red Dog's head. Where is John? If you are a dog, and you lose your master, your one special friend, it is a terrible thing. Red Dog had only one plan. He went to every place that John knew, looking in every corner for him, hoping and hoping to find him. From this time, Red Dog became the dog of the Northwest. He belonged to everyone because he could never find John again, and there was no one who could take his place. Chapter 6. The dog of the Northwest, Red Dog, had his greatest adventures after John's death. He always liked traveling, but when John was alive, Red Dog liked to be with him. Now he was free and answered to nobody. He was well known and well loved in the Northwest, and every week somebody tried to give him a home, make him comfortable, give him good meals. Red Dog liked all these people, and he often stayed a while, but he always moved on sooner or later. Then, months later, there he was, scratching at the door, back again for a short visit and a good meal. He traveled as usual on the Hammersley Iron buses, and in the train to Mount Tom Price. He watched people's faces carefully, still looking for John. He traveled 900 kilometers to Broome with a road train and stayed for 2 weeks, eating every night at the town's hotel. He looked everywhere, but couldn't find John, so he came back in an old car with a large family. One day, he was outside Nancy's caravan on a terribly hot summer day. Nancy and Patsy, with another friend called Ellen, were getting ready to go on holiday. They were planning to drive to Perth, 1,500 kilometers to the south, where it was much less hot. "Hello, Red," said Patsy. "Got nothing to do?" "Why don't we take him with us?" said Ellen. "He'll enjoy the ride." "Want to come to Perth?" asked Nancy. She patted the seat beside her, and the dog jumped into the back. Women smelled nice, and often gave you sweet things to eat, like chocolate. So Red Dog decided to go with them. The 3 women soon remembered why it was a mistake to travel with Red Dog in a small car. They spent the 2 days' drive saying, "Pooey, pooey," and "Oh no, not again, Red." But Red Dog usually had his head out of the window, and so did not hear them. Patsy, Ellen, and Nancy went swimming and lay on the beach in the sunshine. Red Dog enjoyed swimming too, and also the many ball games on the beach. In one game, he ran away with the ball, and people had to chase him up the beach to get it back. One day, Patsy said, "Let's go to Rottnest tomorrow." "You can't take a dog over to Rottnest Island, can you?" said Nancy. "What'll we do with Red?" "Where is Red anyway?" said Ellen, sitting up. They looked up and down the beach. They called and shouted. They went to the hotels and cafes. They looked through the park. Red Dog was nowhere. "You know what we've done?" said Patsy. "We've lost the most famous dog in Western Australia." "When we get home, they're going to kill us," said Nancy. "What are we going to do?" "Just think," said Ellen unhappily, "what Jocko and Pito and Vanna will say." That was the end of their holiday. They went to the best fish restaurants, but they couldn't eat. They went shopping, but they couldn't find anything to buy. So they went home, worrying about Red Dog all the way. When at last they got home, late at night, they found Red Dog waiting for them outside Patsy's caravan. He didn't like Perth very much, and he couldn't find John on the beach, so he found a truck driver to give him a ride home. The 3 women were really pleased to see him and gave him a big meal. "But you're a bad boy, Red," said Patsy. "Look what you did to our holiday. We've still got a few days' holiday, so why don't we go down to Exmouth?" Nancy said. "Yeah, why not?" said the other two. They all looked at Red Dog, and Ellen said, "Are we taking Red?" "Not on your life," said Nancy and Patsy. Red Dog went to visit Jocko, Pito, and Vano at Hamersley Iron, and then he went and stayed for a night at the Walkabout Hotel in Karatha. The cook there was a friend of his and always gave him a good meal. 3 days later, he gave the three women a very great surprise when he walked past their cafe in Exmouth. He was pleased to see them, but by the next morning he was on his way to Onslow with another truck driver friend. Nancy, Patsy, and Ellen all lived in caravans in the caravan park. Many people were living there while they waited for the builders to finish the new houses. The park was a nice place, with flowers everywhere, but there were 2 things wrong with it. One thing was a rule which said no dogs, and the other thing was a caretaker who liked rules, and who did not like dogs. His name was Mr. Cribbage, and every time he saw Red Dog, he tried to chase him away. There was also a cat who lived in the caravan park, called Red Cat. He liked the rule about no dogs because he hated dogs. He was a big cat, with orange-red fur, green eyes, and great paws, which hid long, dangerous claws. Red Cat never lost a fight. Red Dog liked chasing cats. He was a cleverer dog than most, but like most dogs, he did not understand cats. He met Red Cat one day behind Nancy's caravan. At once, he jumped forward to begin the chase, and then stopped, because Red Cat did not run. He sat still, opened his mouth, and hissed. Red Dog jumped again, but still Red Cat did not run. He hissed again, even louder, and his fur stood up all along his back. Red Dog began to feel less sure of himself, but he still wanted to chase. He tried again, but Red Cat hit out with his claws, and blood began to run from Red Dog's nose. Red Dog showed his teeth and growled. Red Cat showed his teeth and hissed. Nose to nose, growling and hissing, the 2 animals moved slowly round in a circle. Red Cat scratched Red Dog again. Red Dog tried to use his teeth, but was too slow. Then Nancy came round the corner and stopped the fight. There was now a new vet in Roebourne, which was much nearer than Port Hedland, and Nancy took Red Dog there. The young vet cleaned the scratches on Red Dog's nose and said, "I saw a dog just like this last week, but he had a different owner. And the week before, another man brought in a dog just like this. Why are there so many dogs round here that all look the same?" Nancy smiled to herself. Red Dog was everybody's dog now, and when Red Dog needed to go to the vet, one of his many friends took him. One day soon the vet would understand the mystery. When Red Dog went back to the caravan park, he looked for Red Cat. They began hissing and growling again, but the fight never happened. And one day, people saw something very surprising. Red Dog and Red Cat were sitting together, side by side, watching the sun go down, just like 2 old people sitting in their garden. They were strange friends, it's true, but friends they were. Red Cat still hated dogs, but not Red Dog. Red Dog still chased cats, but not Red Cat. One day Nancy took a picture of Red Dog sleeping, with Red Cat sleeping on top of him. She made 2 copies, sent one to a newspaper, and put the other copy on her wall. Chapter 7. Red Dog and His Friends. During the years after John's death, Red Dog traveled all over the Northwest. He had many adventures and accidents and made many new friends. Once he fell off a trailer and hurt his leg. A man called Don, who worked at Dampier Salt Company, found him and took him to the vet in Roebourne. The vet knew all about Red Dog now. "He stayed with me once for a few days," the vet told Don. "Then he went off again. You know what he does? He knows which cars come from Dampier. So he looks for one, then goes and sits next to it until the driver comes back. Then he gets a ride back home. Vets cost money, of course, and who was going to pay the vet's bills for Red Dog? This is what the men of Dampier Salt Company did. They opened a bank account for him at the Wales Bank under the name Red Dog, and everybody put a little money in. He was a dog who belonged to everybody in that part of Australia, and he was often called the Dog of the Northwest. But he had a third name, too. In Australia, anyone with red hair is called Bluey, and some people called him that. To Mr. and Mrs. Cribbage, Red Dog did not have a name. He was just that dog. Red Dog often visited his friends in the caravan park, and one day Mrs. Cribbage saw him when he was scratching at Patsy's door. She ran up to him shouting, "Hey, you! Off! Away!" Red Dog looked at this strange fat woman and scratched again on Patsy's door. Patsy opened the door. "What's up?" she asked Mrs. Cribbage. "No dogs," said Mrs. Cribbage. Patsy looked at her. "You don't understand. This isn't just any dog. This is Red Dog." "A dog's a dog," said Mrs. Cribbage. "It doesn't matter if it's the Queen of England's dog. This is a dog, and that's that. No dogs." "Red Dog's special," Patsy said. "Everyone knows that." "Get that dog out of here," said Mrs. Cribbage. "I'm telling you, if you don't, we'll shoot it, and we'll get you and your caravan out of the park, too." Mrs. Cribbage walked away, feeling pleased. Rules were rules, and she and her husband were the bosses in this caravan park. The next day, she and Mr. Cribbage made a lot of new notices that said no dogs. They went round the park and put a notice up on every tree. The people in the park shook their heads. They agreed a plan to stop Mr. and Mrs. Cribbage catching Red Dog. "If anyone sees the Cribbages when Red Dog is visiting," said Nancy, "just shout cats loudly. Then we'll hide Red Dog, and the Cribbages won't see him." Mr. and Mrs. Cribbage never understood why people in the park went around shouting cats all the time. Now it happened that both Patsy and Nancy were afraid of the dark, and at night there were no lights in the park. So if they had to go out of their caravans to the dunny, that was the toilet. They didn't like it. Red Dog could smell his way around in the dark, but he understood that Nancy and Patsy were afraid. It was a strange thing,